The telegram came from a man named Harlow, who claimed Oliver Ingram owed him 3 weeks and 40 head of branded stock by the 15th of September. And Oliver read it standing in the dust outside the Mercantile in Mineral Point, Washington Territory, where he had stopped only to resupply on his way north. He folded the paper into his vest pocket and calculated the days. It was the 9th. 6 days to ride back to Oregon, collect the herd, and make good on a promise he had shaken hands on 4 months earlier. He could do it if he left within the hour. He was turning toward the hitching post where his bay gelding stood when he heard the sound. A horse at full gallop, hooves pounding the dry September earth, and then a woman's voice, sharp and clear. "Get off my property." Oliver looked up the street. A man on a dark roan had ridden into the yard of a small clapboard house with a kitchen garden out front and a stable behind. The man was young, well dressed in a wool suit and polished boots, and he held a short riding crop in his right hand. A woman stood on the porch, her hands clenched at her sides. She wore a plain cotton dress and her dark hair was pinned up, a few strands loose around her face. Even from a distance, Oliver could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself very still. "I came to talk," the man said, his voice carrying. "You owe me that much, Sylvia." "I owe you nothing," she said. "You made sure of that in front of the judge." The man swung down from his horse, the crop still in his hand. He took 2 steps toward the porch and Sylvia took 1 step back. Oliver saw the movement, the small retreat, and something in him went tight and cold. "You think you can ignore me," the man said. "You think you can live in this town like nothing happened. My father owns half the businesses here. 1 word from me and you will not have credit anywhere. You will not have work. You will not have—" Oliver was already walking. He did not run. He simply crossed the street with long, even strides, his spurs chiming softly, and stepped into the yard. The man with the crop turned, surprised, and Oliver moved between him and the porch, placing himself squarely in the space the man had been advancing through. "Afternoon," Oliver said. His voice was easy, almost friendly, but he did not move aside. The man stared at him. "This is a private matter." "Does not look private from where I am standing," Oliver said. "Looks like a man with a quirt in a lady's yard and the lady asked you to leave." "Who the hell are you?" Oliver smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Just a fellow passing through, but I have got time." The man's face flushed. He was handsome in a polished way, clean-shaven, with pale eyes and a mouth that looked used to getting what it wanted. "This is my former wife. I have every right—" "No," Sylvia said from the porch. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. "You do not. The divorce gave you what you wanted. I kept nothing but this house, and you made sure everyone knew why." The man turned toward her, and Oliver shifted slightly, keeping himself between them. The movement was small but deliberate. The man noticed. His hand tightened on the crop. "You should move," he said to Oliver. "I think I will stay right here," Oliver said. For a moment it seemed the man might swing the crop. Oliver saw his shoulder tense, saw the calculation in his eyes. Then the man seemed to remember where he was in daylight on a street where curtains were already twitching in windows. He stepped back. "This is not finished," he said. He looked past Oliver to Sylvia. "You cannot hide behind strangers forever." He mounted his horse and rode back toward the main street, the roan's hooves kicking up small clouds of dust. Oliver stood in the yard until the man was out of sight, then turned toward the porch. Sylvia was watching him, her face pale, her hands still clenched. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steadier now, but he could hear the effort it cost her. "No need," Oliver said. He touched the brim of his hat. "I am sorry you had to deal with that. It is not the first time." She hesitated. "He is Nathaniel Colby. His father owns the bank and half the businesses in town. People do not cross him." "Then I suppose it is fortunate I am just passing through," Oliver said. He glanced back toward the street, then at her. "Will he come back?" "Probably." She wrapped her arms around herself. "He does not like being told no." Oliver considered this. He thought about the telegram in his pocket, about Harlow and the herd and the 6 days he had to make it to Oregon. He thought about the bay gelding tied outside the mercantile and the long, empty road stretching south. Then he looked at Sylvia Colby, standing alone on her porch in a town where her former husband's family held all the power, and he made a decision that surprised him. "Is there somewhere I can stable my horse?" he asked. "Might be I will stay a day or two," she blinked. "You do not have to do that, I know," he said, "but I think I will anyway." She studied him for a long moment. She had gray eyes, he noticed, clear and direct. "There is a livery 2 streets over. Mr. Brennan runs it. Tell him Sylvia Carter sent you." "Carter," Oliver said. "My name before I married," she said. "The name I use now," Oliver nodded. "Oliver Ingram," he said. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Carter." "Mrs. Carter," she said quietly. A divorced woman is still called Mrs. even if she wishes otherwise. He saw something in her face then, a weariness that went deeper than fear. "I will be at the livery if you need anything," he said. She nodded, and he left her there, walking back to collect his horse. As he rode toward the livery, he took out the telegram and read it again. 6 days. He had 6 days, and he was spending the first one here. Harlow would be furious. His partner might sell off the stock to someone else. Oliver had never missed a commitment in his life. But when he closed his eyes, he saw the way Nathaniel Colby had moved toward that porch, crop in hand, and the way Sylvia Carter had stepped back, alone with no one to call for help. He folded the telegram and put it away. The livery was a large barn with a paddock out back. A man with a gray beard and strong hands took the bay and promised good care. Oliver paid for 3 days in advance and asked about a boarding house. "Widow Parrish runs a place on 2nd Street, the man said. "Clean beds, decent food. She does not gossip, which you might find useful." "Useful how?" Oliver asked. The man glanced at him. "Saw you walk into Sylvia Carter's yard. Saw Nathaniel Colby ride out looking like he wanted to break something. Town like this, people notice." "Is that going to be a problem?" Oliver asked. "Depends on who you ask," the man said. "Colby's run things here. Nathaniel divorced Sylvia 2 years ago, claimed she was barren, made sure everyone knew it. His family made sure she kept only that house and nothing else. Most people do not talk to her. Those that do keep it quiet. Why did he divorce her if he cannot leave her alone?" Oliver asked. The man shrugged. "Some men like to own things even after they are done with them. Sylvia never did anything but try to live her life, but he cannot stand that she is not miserable. Every few months he finds a reason to remind her he can make trouble." Oliver felt that cold tightness again. "Does the sheriff do anything?" "Sheriff Wardell is a nice enough man, but he knows who pays his salary," the man said. "Colby family built the bank that holds every mortgage in town. They built the mill that gives half the men here work. Sheriff is not going to arrest Nathaniel for having a conversation with his former wife. Even if that conversation happens with a quirt in his hand." The man met his eyes. "You seem like a decent fellow, Mr. Ingram, so I will tell you this. Nathaniel Colby is a mean drunk and a spiteful sober man, but he is careful. He does not hit her where it shows. He does not do anything that would give the sheriff cause to act. He just makes her life smaller and smaller until she has nothing left. And the town lets him because it is easier than standing up to his father." Oliver absorbed this. "How does she live, if no one will hire her or give her credit?" "She takes in mending and laundry from travelers passing through, keeps a few chickens. She had a milk cow, but it died last winter and she could not afford another. People who do not live here year-round, they do not know the situation, so they pay her fare. It is not much, but she manages. That is no way to live, Oliver said. No, the man agreed. It is not. But she has nowhere else to go and nothing to go with. Divorce left her with a scandal and a mortgage. At least here she has a roof. Oliver thanked him and found the boarding house. Mrs. Parrish was a woman of 50 with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She showed him a small, clean room on the second floor and served him a supper of beef stew and bread. She did not ask questions, which he appreciated. That night he lay awake in the unfamiliar bed and thought about Sylvia Carter standing alone on her porch and about the 6 days that were now 5. He thought about his partner in Oregon, about the herd he was supposed to collect, about the life he had built by never staying anywhere long enough to be tied down. He owned his horse, his saddle, his gear, and nothing else. No debts, no obligations, no one depending on him. It was exactly the way he wanted it. Except now he could not stop thinking about gray eyes and the small step backward, the fear that came from knowing no one would help. The next morning he went back to Sylvia's house. She answered the door with flour on her hands, surprised to see him. "I thought you would have left by now," she said. "Not yet," he said. "I was wondering if you needed anything. Repairs, chores, anything that needs fixing." She frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because I am here and I can help," he said simply. She studied him, the same direct look she had given him the day before. "You do not owe me anything, Mr. Ingram." "I know," he said. "But if you have work that needs doing, I have time." She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "The back fence is falling down. I do not have money to hire someone to fix it properly, but if you could shore it up enough to keep the chickens in, I would be grateful. I can pay you in meals." "Deal," Oliver said. The fence was in worse shape than she had let on. Half the posts were rotted through, and the wire was rusted and sagging. He spent the morning pulling out the worst posts and resetting them with rocks and packed earth. The work was hard but familiar, and he fell into the rhythm of it, the sun warm on his back, the sound of chickens clucking in the yard. Around noon, Sylvia brought him a plate of bread and cheese and a jar of cold water. She sat on the back step while he ate, her hands folded in her lap. "You did not have to stay," she said after a moment. "I know," he said. "Then why did you?" He took a drink of water, considering his answer. "I have been a lot of places," he said finally. "Seen a lot of things. Most of the time, people mind their own business, and that is fine. But every now and then you see something that is not right and you have a choice. You can keep riding or you can stop. I decided to stop." "Even though it costs you," she said. He looked at her. "How did you know that?" "You had a telegram yesterday," she said. "You read it and you looked like a man who had somewhere to be. Then Nathaniel showed up and you stayed. I am not foolish enough to think that was without consequence." "I will sort it out," he said, which was not exactly a lie, though he had no idea how. She was quiet for a moment. "People will talk," she said. "About you being here, about you helping me. It will make things difficult. For me or for you," she said. "I am already as difficult as I can be in this town." He smiled at that, a real smile this time. "I think I can handle it." She smiled back just a little, and he saw that she was younger than he had thought, maybe 30 at most. The weariness in her face made her seem older. "How long were you married?" he asked, then wondered if he had overstepped, but she did not seem offended. 5 years, she said. "I was 23 when we married. Nathaniel was charming. His family had money and status. My father had died the year before and my mother was ill. It seemed like a good match." She looked down at her hands. "For a while it was. Then his mother started asking about children. When none came, Nathaniel changed. He started drinking more, staying out late. When he came home, he would say things, small, cruel things about how I was failing him, failing his family." "That is not your fault," Oliver said. "I know that now," she said, "but at the time I believed him. I thought if I could just be better, try harder, everything would be fine. Then one day I came home and found him with another woman in our bed. When I confronted him, he said it was my fault for being barren. He said he needed an heir and I could not give him one. A week later he filed for divorce." Oliver felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. "And the town let him. The town believed him," she said. "He told everyone I was barren, that I had failed in my wifely duties. His family made sure the story spread. By the time the divorce was final, I was a scandal. The barren wife who drove her husband to infidelity. No one would hire me. No one would talk to me. I kept the house only because it had been my mother's, left to me before the marriage, and even that he tried to take." "Why does he keep coming back?" Oliver asked. She looked toward the street, her expression distant. "Because he can. Because every time he shows up and I have to endure it, he wins again. He does not want me back. He wants me to know that I have no power, no recourse, no way to stop him." "You stopped him yesterday," Oliver said. She looked at him. "No, you stopped him. If you had not been there, he would have come up on the porch. He would have stood too close, said things to make me feel small and afraid, and then he would have left and I would have spent the rest of the day shaking." Oliver finished the bread and cheese and stood. "Well, I am here now, and that fence is not going to fix itself." He worked through the afternoon, aware of her moving around inside the house. Once he heard her singing softly, a tune he did not recognize. The sound made something in his chest ease. By evening the fence was as solid as he could make it without new materials. He washed up at the pump, and Sylvia invited him in for supper. The house was small but clean, with simple furniture and lace curtains in the windows. She served stew and biscuits, and they ate at a small table by the window. "This is good," Oliver said. "Thank you," she said. "I do not often have company. Because of the scandal, because people are afraid," she said. "Of what the Colbys might do if they are seen being kind to me. I do not blame them. Everyone has to live." "That is a lonely way to be," Oliver said. She met his eyes. "Yes, it is." After supper he thanked her and walked back to the boarding house. The evening was cool and the streets were quiet. As he passed the bank, he saw Nathaniel Colby standing outside with two other men, all of them smoking cigars. Nathaniel saw him and said something to his companions. They laughed. Oliver kept walking. The next morning he woke to find Mrs. Parrish at his door looking worried. "There is a man downstairs asking for you," she said. "The sheriff." Oliver dressed and went down. Sheriff Wardell was a man in his 50s, thickset, with a badge pinned to his vest and a weary expression. He stood in the parlor turning his hat in his hands. "Mr. Ingram," he said. "That is me," Oliver said. "I need you to come with me," the sheriff said. "There has been a complaint filed." "What kind of complaint?" "Peace bond," the sheriff said. "Nathaniel Colby says you threatened him yesterday, says you blocked his path and made threatening gestures. He is asking the judge to bind you over to keep the peace." Oliver stared at him. "I did not threaten him. I stood between him and Mrs. Carter when he came into her yard with a quirt in his hand." "That is not how he tells it," the sheriff said, "and his father is insistent." "I am sorry, Mr. Ingram, but I need you to come with me." They walked to the courthouse, a square brick building at the center of town. Inside, a judge listened to Nathaniel's complaint. Nathaniel stood in a clean suit, his expression serious and concerned, and told a story about a dangerous stranger who had accosted him on the street, blocked his path, and made threats against his life. He said he feared for his safety and asked that Oliver be bound over to keep the peace and stay away from him. Oliver listened in disbelief. "That is not what happened," he said when the judge asked for his side. "Then what did happen?" the judge asked. "He rode into Mrs. Carter's yard, and she asked him to leave. He advanced on her with a riding crop. I stepped between them. I did not threaten him, I just did not move aside. Did you touch Mr. Colby? The judge asked. No. Did you draw a weapon? No. Did you use abusive language? No. The judge looked at Nathaniel. Is this man's account accurate? No, Your Honor, Nathaniel said smoothly. I went to speak with my former wife about a private matter. This stranger came into the yard uninvited and placed himself in my path. He said he had time to deal with me, which I took as a threat. I left because I did not want trouble, but I fear he means to do me harm. That is a lie, Oliver said. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Ingram, I do not know you. Mr. Colby is a respected member of this community. His father is a prominent businessman. I have no reason to doubt his word. Then ask Mrs. Carter, Oliver said. She was there. She saw everything. The judge looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Carter is the former wife. Her testimony in a matter involving her former husband would not be considered impartial. So you will take his word over mine because his father owns the bank, Oliver said flatly. I will take his word because he is a known member of this community and you are a stranger, the judge said. His voice was firm, but Oliver heard the apology underneath. I am binding you over to keep the peace in the sum of $50. You are to stay at least 100 yards away from Mr. Colby at all times. If you violate this bond, you will forfeit the money and face arrest. Do you understand? I understand, Oliver said. He understood perfectly. Nathaniel had just made it impossible for Oliver to protect Sylvia without risking arrest. He paid the $50, nearly a third of the money he had on him, and walked out of the courthouse. Nathaniel was standing on the steps smoking a cigar. You should leave town, Nathaniel said pleasantly. There is nothing for you here. Oliver looked at him. I am not leaving, Nathaniel smiled. We will see. Oliver went back to the boarding house. Mrs. Parrish brought him coffee and sat down across from him. I heard what happened, she said. The whole town will know by noon. Let them know, Oliver said. They will make it hard for you, she said gently. The Colbys have a long reach. I can handle hard, Oliver said. She patted his hand. You are a good man, Mr. Ingram, but be careful. The Colbys do not forgive. That afternoon he went to the mercantile to buy supplies. The owner, a man named Tuck, looked at him coldly. I cannot sell to you, Tuck said. Why not? Oliver asked. Mr. Colby Sr. came by this morning. Said you were a troublemaker. Said anyone who does business with you would lose their credit at the bank. I've got a mortgage, Mr. Ingram. I cannot afford to cross him. Oliver tried 2 more stores and got the same answer. By evening he understood the game. Nathaniel had not just tied his hands with the peace bond. He had cut off Oliver's ability to buy food, supplies, or anything else in town. The message was clear. Leave or starve. But Oliver had been broke before, and he had been unwelcome before. He went to the livery and asked if he could work for his keep. I would say yes, the man said, but the Colbys got to me too. I am sorry. Oliver nodded and went back to the boarding house. Mrs. Parrish met him at the door. I heard, she said. You can stay here as long as you need. I own this house free and clear. No mortgage, no debt. The Colbys cannot touch me. They can make trouble for you, Oliver said. Let them try, she said. I have been a widow for 20 years and I have managed just fine. You need a place to stay, you have one here. That night Oliver sat in his room and took out the telegram again. The 15th was 4 days away now. Even if he left tomorrow, he would not make it in time. Harlow would sell the herd to someone else, would cut him out of the partnership. The work Oliver had done over the last 4 months, the contacts he had made, the trust he had built, all of it would be gone. He should leave. He should ride out tomorrow and try to salvage what he could. Sylvia Carter was not his responsibility. He had done what he could. It was not his fault the system was rigged. Except he kept thinking about her face when Nathaniel had advanced on the porch. He kept thinking about the way she had stepped back, the years of small cruelties that had taught her to retreat. He thought about her singing in the kitchen, that small moment of peace in a life that had been made narrow and hard by a man who could not let go. Oliver had spent his whole life moving, never staying, never letting himself be tied to anyone or anything. It was easier that way, safer. But for the first time he wondered if easy and safe were the same as right. He folded the telegram and put it away. The next morning he went to Sylvia's house. She opened the door and looked surprised to see him. "I thought you would have left," she said. "Why does everyone keep thinking that?" He asked. "Because you have no reason to stay," she said, "and because the Colbys will make your life miserable until you go." "They are welcome to try," he said. "I thought I would see if you have any more work that needs doing." She stepped aside and let him in. "Oliver, you cannot keep doing this. They will destroy you." It was the first time she had used his given name. He liked the sound of it. "Let me worry about that," he said. "What needs fixing?" She showed him a dozen small things. A door that stuck, a window that would not close, a leak in the roof over the washroom. He spent the day working, and she spent it mending clothes and baking bread. They did not talk much, but the silence was comfortable. In the afternoon, Nathaniel rode past the house, slowly, looking at the yard. He saw Oliver on the roof and reined in his horse. For a long moment they looked at each other. Then Nathaniel turned and rode away. "He will not let this go," Sylvia said when Oliver came down. "I know," Oliver said. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You do not even know me." Oliver set down his tools and looked at her. "Because someone should," he said. "Because you deserve better than being afraid in your own home. Because I have spent my whole life keeping things simple and easy, and maybe I am tired of it." She stared at him. "You are going to get hurt." "Maybe," he said, "but I am still staying." That evening she asked him to stay for supper again. They ate at the small table and talked, really talked, for the first time. She asked him about his life, and he told her about the places he had been, the horses he had bought and sold, the freedom of the road. She listened with her chin in her hand, her eyes bright. "It sounds lonely," she said. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but it is also simple. No one to answer to. No one to let down. Or to care for you," she said softly. He looked at her across the table and felt something shift inside him, a door he had kept locked for a long time creaking open. "No," he said. "That either." She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Her fingers were warm and calloused from work. "Thank you for staying." "You are welcome," he said. That night as he walked back to the boarding house he knew he was in trouble, not from the Colbys, though that was coming, but from the way his heart had skipped when she touched his hand, from the way he had started thinking about staying not for a few days but for longer, maybe much longer. Oliver Ingram, who had never stayed anywhere, was falling for a woman in a town where her former husband controlled everything and wanted nothing more than to see her broken. It was the worst possible idea, and he could not seem to stop. The next day was Sunday. Oliver went to church, something he had not done in years, and sat in the back pew. Sylvia was there, sitting alone near the front. Every other pew was full, but the seats on either side of her were empty. During the hymns, no one sang next to her. During the prayers, no one looked at her. She sat with her head high, her hands folded in her lap, and Oliver wanted to walk down that aisle and sit beside her. Peace bond be damned. After the service he waited outside. She came out alone and saw him and smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "You came to church," she said. "Seemed like the thing to do on a Sunday," he said. "Walk with me?" she asked. They walked through the town, keeping to the side streets where there were fewer people. She pointed out houses and told him stories about the people who lived there, the small kindnesses she remembered from before the divorce, the way the town had been when she was a girl. "I loved it here once," she said. "I thought I would raise my children here, grow old here. Now I do not know if I can stay." "Where would you go?" he asked. "I do not know," she said. "Somewhere no one knows me, somewhere I could start over." She looked at him. "What about you? Where will you go when you leave?" "I do not know," he said, and realized it was true. For the first time in his life he had no plan, no next place. All he knew was that he did not want to leave her. They walked back to her house and found Nathaniel's father waiting on the porch. Colby Sr. was a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes. He looked at Oliver with distaste. "Mr. Ingram," he said, "I believe you are violating the peace bond." "I am walking with Mrs. Carter," Oliver said, "not bothering your son." "My son is inside his own home, which happens to be across the street," Colby Sr. said, gesturing to a large house with a wide porch and manicured lawn. "You are within 100 yards. I could have the sheriff arrest you right now." Oliver looked at the house. He had not noticed it before, had not realized Nathaniel lived so close to Sylvia. Of course he did. It was another way to control her, to make sure she never felt safe. "I will leave," Oliver said quietly. "But this is not over." "Oh, I think it is," Colby Sr. said. He looked at Sylvia. "You could make this all go away, you know. Nathaniel is willing to forgive. He would take you back, give you your place in society again. All you have to do is ask." Sylvia's face went pale. "I would rather die." "That can be arranged," Colby Sr. said pleasantly. "In a manner of speaking. No credit, no work, no friends. How long do you think you can last? Another year? 2. He looked at Oliver. "And you, Mr. Ingram, how long before you realize this foolishness is costing you everything? You have already lost your business in Oregon. Your partner sent word this morning that he has sold your share to another buyer. You have nothing left, all for a woman who is not even yours." Oliver felt the words like a punch to the gut. Harlow had sold him out. The partnership he had spent months building was gone. And Colby Sr. knew all about it, had probably paid for the information just to twist the knife. "Get off her porch," Oliver said. "Or what?" Colby Sr. asked. "You will threaten me too, give me cause to have you arrested. Please do. It would make this all so much simpler." Oliver stepped back. Every instinct screamed at him to grab the man and throw him into the street, but he knew that was exactly what Colby wanted. He forced himself to breathe, to stay calm. "I am leaving," he said. "But you tell your son that if he comes near her again, peace bond or no peace bond, I will make him regret it." "That sounds like a threat," Colby Sr. said. "It is a promise," Oliver said. He walked away before he could do something stupid. Behind him he heard Colby Sr. say something to Sylvia, too low to make out, and her sharp reply. Then the sound of footsteps on wood and a door slamming. Oliver went back to the boarding house and sat in his room staring at the wall. His partnership was gone. His plans for the next 6 months, the next year, all gone. He should be furious. He should be halfway to Oregon right now, trying to salvage something. Instead, all he could think about was Sylvia's face when Colby Sr. had offered to take her back, the revulsion and fear in her eyes. That evening there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, Sylvia was standing there, a basket in her hands. "How did you know which room?" he asked. "Mrs. Parrish told me," she said. "I brought you supper. I thought you might not have eaten." He had not. He let her in and she set the basket on the small table. Inside was bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of stew. "You should not be here," he said. "If the Colbys find out, they already know everything," she said. "They have made that clear. I am not going to let them dictate who I can bring a meal to." She sat down and watched him eat. After a moment she said, I am sorry about your partnership. Not your fault, he said. It is, though, she said. You stayed because of me. You missed your deadline because of me. You lost your business because of me. I stayed because I chose to, he said. No one forced me. But why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why would you give up everything for someone you barely know? He set down his fork and looked at her. In the lamplight, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. She looked tired and sad and stubborn, and he realized with a clarity that took his breath away that he was in love with her. Completely, irrevocably in love with a woman he had known for 4 days. Because some things matter more than a partnership, he said. Because I have spent my whole life running from anything that might tie me down, and I am tired of running. Because when I look at you, I see someone brave and strong and kind, and I do not want to be the kind of man who rides away and leaves you alone. She stared at him. A tear slipped down her cheek. You do not know me. I know enough, he said. She stood up and he stood with her. For a moment they just looked at each other, the space between them charged and fragile. Then she stepped forward and kissed him, her hands coming up to frame his face. He pulled her close and kissed her back, tasting salt and hope and something that felt like coming home. When they broke apart, she was crying in earnest. This is madness, she whispered. Probably, he said. They will destroy you. They can try. She laughed, a wet, shaky sound, and kissed him again. When she finally pulled away, she wiped her eyes and said, I should go. It is late. I will walk you home. Oliver, the peace bond. I will stay 101 yards away from Nathaniel's house, he said, but I am walking you home. They walked through the dark streets, keeping to the shadows. When they reached her house, he stopped at the edge of the yard and watched until she was safely inside. Then he walked back to the boarding house, his heart full and his mind racing. The next morning he woke to the smell of smoke. He ran to the window and saw it immediately. A column of black smoke rising from the direction of Sylvia's house. He dressed and ran, his heart pounding. By the time he reached her street, a crowd had gathered. Flames were pouring from her barn, the old wood burning fast and hot. He could hear the screaming of horses trapped inside. Sylvia was trying to get to the barn, but 2 men were holding her back. She was crying, fighting to break free. Oliver ran to her. How many horses? He shouted over the roar of the fire. 11, she sobbed. I take in horses that need rehabilitation. They are all in there. Oliver looked at the barn. The fire was already too far gone. The roof was collapsing. But he could hear the horses screaming, and he could not stand there and do nothing. He grabbed a blanket from someone's hands, dunked it in the horse trough, and wrapped it around his head and shoulders. Then he ran into the barn. The smoke was blinding, the heat like a solid wall. He could barely see, could barely breathe. He found the first stall and threw it open. The horse inside reared and bolted past him toward the door. He moved to the next stall and the next, flinging doors open, slapping horses on the rump to drive them out. Some ran. Some were too frightened. He grabbed their halters and dragged them, pulling with all his strength. The roof groaned above him. Burning timber crashed down, missing him by inches. His lungs burned. His eyes streamed. He found another stall, another horse. He could not remember how many he had freed, could not count. He just kept moving, kept opening doors, kept dragging horses toward the light. Then someone grabbed him from behind and hauled him backward. He fought, trying to go back, but strong arms dragged him out of the barn and into the yard. He collapsed on the ground, coughing, gasping. Someone poured water over his head. When he could finally see again, he looked around. 7 horses were standing in the yard, wild-eyed and trembling. The barn was fully engulfed now, the flames reaching toward the sky. The screaming had stopped. 4 horses had not made it out. Sylvia was on her knees in the dirt, sobbing. Oliver crawled to her and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, shaking. "You saved 7, he said hoarsely. 7 is more than none. But 4 died, she whispered. 4 died because someone burned my barn." He pulled back to look at her. "What?" "It was not an accident," she said. Her eyes were red and streaming. "I smelled kerosene. Someone poured it around the barn and set it on fire. Someone wanted them to die." Oliver looked at the burning barn, at the crowd gathered around. He saw Nathaniel standing at the edge of the crowd, watching. Their eyes met. Nathaniel smiled just a little and turned away. The sheriff arrived an hour later. By then the barn was a smoking ruin. The 7 surviving horses were in Sylvia's yard, still panicked. The 4 that had died were nothing but bones in the ashes. Oliver told the sheriff about the kerosene. Sylvia told him she had locked the barn at dusk like she always did, and it had been secure. The fire had started in the middle of the night. "Sounds like arson," the sheriff said. "It was arson," Oliver said. "And I think you know who did it." The sheriff looked at him. "You got any proof?" "The proof is in the ashes," Oliver said. "Kerosene does not appear by accident." "I will investigate," the sheriff said, but his tone said he would not. Over the next few days Oliver stayed with Sylvia, helping her care for the surviving horses. She was devastated, not just by the loss of the 4 who had died, but by the loss of her livelihood. The horses she rehabilitated were her income. Without them, without a barn, she had nothing. "I am finished," she said one evening. They were sitting on her porch watching the sun set. "I cannot afford to rebuild. I cannot afford to keep the horses I have left. The Colbys won." "No," Oliver said. "They have not." "Oliver, look around," she said. "My barn is gone. 4 horses are dead. I have no money, no credit, no way to make a living. What do you call that?" "I call it a fight that is not over," he said. He took her hand. "Sylvia, I have been thinking. I have some money saved. Not a lot, but enough to buy lumber. We can rebuild the barn. We can—" "No," she said. "I will not let you do that. You have already lost everything because of me." "I have not lost everything," he said. "I have lost a partnership with a man who did not trust me enough to wait a week. I have lost the goodwill of a town I do not care about, but I have gained something too." "What?" she asked. "You," he said simply. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You do not even know if this will work. We have known each other for less than a week." "I know," he said. "But I also know that I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I know that when I think about the future, you are in it. I know that I would rather fight this fight with you than ride away to an easy life without you." "It will not be easy," she said. "The Colbys will never let us be. Then we will deal with them," he said. "Together." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You are the stubbornest man I have ever met." "I will take that as a compliment," he said. The next morning Oliver went to the mercantile and tried again to buy lumber. Tuck refused as expected. Oliver went to the sawmill and got the same answer. He tried every supplier in town and was turned away by all of them. He went back to Sylvia's house, frustrated and angry. She saw his face and sighed. "I told you," she said. "They own everything." "Not everything," Oliver said. "There has to be someone in this town who is not afraid of the Colbys." "If there is, I have not found them," she said. Oliver thought about this. Then he had an idea. "What about outside of town? There are other towns, other suppliers." "The nearest town is 20 miles away," she said. "I do not have a wagon, but I have a horse," he said. "And you have 7 more. We can make a string. We can go buy what we need and haul it back ourselves." She looked at him. "That would take days, maybe a week." "Then it takes a week," he said. "Oliver, you do not have to." "Yes, I do," he said. "Because I am not giving up, and I am not letting you give up either." They left the next morning, taking 3 of the calmest horses loaded with packs. The ride to the nearest town took most of the day. The town was smaller than Mineral Point, dustier, but the sawmill there was happy to sell to them. Oliver bought lumber, nails, wire, and everything else they would need. It took 2 days to haul it all back, the horses straining under the weight. When they returned to Mineral Point, word had already spread. Oliver saw people watching as they led the loaded horses through town. Some looked angry, some looked curious. A few looked like they wanted to help but did not dare. They unloaded the lumber in Sylvia's yard and Oliver started building. He had built fences and corrals before, but never a full barn. He worked from dawn until dusk, measuring, cutting, hammering. Sylvia worked beside him, holding boards, handing him nails, fetching water when he got too hot. It was hard, exhausting work, but there was something deeply satisfying about it. He was building something that would last, something that mattered. He was putting down roots for the first time in his life, and it felt right. A week into the work, a man named Ellis from the edge of town came by. He watched for a while, then picked up a hammer. "Figure you could use a hand," he said. "I thought everyone in this town was afraid of the Colbys," Oliver said. "I do not have a mortgage," Ellis said, "and I am too old to care what they think." Another man came the next day, and another the day after. Not many, but enough. Men who were retired or who owned their land outright, men who remembered when Sylvia had been a girl in this town and thought what had been done to her was wrong. They did not say much, just showed up and worked. Nathaniel rode by twice, watching. He did not say anything, but Oliver could feel the anger coming off him in waves. The barn went up slowly, but it went up. By the end of September, they had the frame complete and the walls going up. It would not be as large as the old barn, but it would hold the horses and keep them safe. One evening, as Oliver was finishing for the day, Sylvia came out and sat beside him on the porch step. She had flour on her hands again, and she smelled like bread and sunshine. "I owe you everything," she said. "You do not owe me anything," he said. "Yes, I do," she said. "You gave up your life for me. You stayed when anyone else would have left. You are building me a barn with your own hands. How can I not owe you?" He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Because I am not doing this so you will owe me. I am doing this because I want to. Because when I think about my life, I do not want to be alone anymore. I want to wake up next to you. I want to build things with you. I want to grow old with you. That is not a debt. That is a gift." She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with tears. "I love you," she said. "I know it has only been a few weeks, but I love you." "I love you too," he said, and kissed her. They were married a week later, quietly at the courthouse. Mrs. Parrish and Ellis stood as witnesses. The judge, who had bound Oliver over to keep the peace, performed the ceremony with a faintly apologetic air, as if he knew he was sealing something the Colbys would despise. Oliver did not care. He stood beside Sylvia and promised to love and protect her for the rest of his life, and he meant every word. They had a small supper at Mrs. Parrish's boarding house afterward, just the four of them. It was not fancy, but it was warm and happy, and that was enough. That night, Sylvia and Oliver went back to her house, which was now their house. They lay together in the small bed and talked about the future, about finishing the barn, about buying more horses, about building a life. "I never thought I would be happy again," Sylvia said, her head on his chest. "I thought the rest of my life would be like the last 2 years, lonely and small and afraid." "You do not have to be afraid anymore," Oliver said. "I am not going anywhere, promise," she asked. "Promise," he said, but he should have known the Colbys were not finished. 2 weeks later, the barn caught fire again. This time Oliver was there. He woke to the smell of smoke and ran outside to find flames licking up the side of the new barn. He shouted for Sylvia and grabbed buckets, throwing water on the fire. The horses were screaming again, panicked by the memory of the last fire. Sylvia ran out and together they fought the flames. Neighbors came running, some with buckets, some just to watch. This time the fire was smaller, contained to one corner, and they managed to put it out before it spread. When it was over, Oliver walked around the barn looking for the source. He found it almost immediately. A pile of rags soaked in kerosene, shoved up against the wall. Someone had tried to burn them out again. "That is it," Oliver said. He was so angry he was shaking. "I am going to the sheriff and I am going to make him do his job." "Oliver, it will not help," Sylvia said. "He will say there is no proof, no witnesses. He will do nothing and the Colbys will know they can keep doing this until we break." "Then we find proof," Oliver said. "We find witnesses. We make sure everyone knows what they are doing." The next morning, Oliver went into town and started asking questions. Who had sold kerosene in the last 2 weeks? Who had bought it and in what quantities? Most people refused to talk to him, but a few did. He learned that the mercantile had sold 3 large cans of kerosene to someone in the last week, an unusually large order. When he asked who had bought it, Tuck refused to say. Oliver went to the sheriff with this information. Wardell listened with a pained expression. "That is not enough," he said. "Kerosene is not illegal, lots of people buy it." "In that quantity?" Oliver asked. "All at once." "Still not proof," the sheriff said. Oliver wanted to hit something. Instead he walked out and went looking for other answers. He checked with the livery, with the freight office, with anyone who might have seen someone near Sylvia's property the night of the fire. Finally, he got lucky. A bootmaker named Terrence had been working late in his shop the night of the second fire. He had seen a man walking down the street toward Sylvia's house, carrying something wrapped in cloth. He had not thought much of it at the time, but when Oliver described Nathaniel, Terrence nodded. "That is who it was," he said. "I am sure of it. I recognize his walk. Will you testify to that?" Oliver asked. Terrence hesitated. "If I do, the Colbys will ruin me." "They are already ruining us," Oliver said. "If we do not stop them now, they will keep doing this until someone gets killed." Terrence looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, I will testify." Armed with this information, Oliver went back to the sheriff. Wardell listened, but he looked deeply unhappy. "A bootmaker's testimony is not going to be enough to arrest Nathaniel Colby," he said. "Then what will be enough?" Oliver demanded. "Proof," the sheriff said. "Hard, undeniable proof." Oliver thought about this. Then he had an idea. "The kerosene Tuck sold. If we can trace it to Nathaniel, that is proof." "Tuck will never admit who he sold it to," Wardell said. "He does not have to," Oliver said. "He keeps records, sales ledgers. If we get a look at those, we will know." "I cannot just search his store without cause," the sheriff said. "Then get cause," Oliver said. 2 fires in 3 weeks, both at the same property, both involving kerosene, that is cause." Wardell sighed. "You are a stubborn man, Mr. Ingram." "I prefer persistent," Oliver said. It took another week, but finally the sheriff agreed to request the sales ledger from the mercantile. Tuck protested, but when Wardell pointed out that refusing would look suspicious, he handed it over. Oliver and the sheriff went through the entries together. On the day before the second fire, there was a sale of 3 cans of kerosene, paid for in cash. No name was recorded, but there was a note in the margin. It said simply, "Colby account." "That is it," Oliver said. "That is your proof." Wardell stared at the ledger. He looked like he had swallowed something bitter. "This is going to be a problem." "It is already a problem," Oliver said. "Now you can do something about it." The sheriff arrested Nathaniel Colby that afternoon. The news spread through town like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew. Colby Sr. came storming into the sheriff's office, threatening lawsuits, ruin, and worse. But Wardell, to his credit, held firm. "I have got a bootmaker who saw your son near the scene of the fire, and I have got a sales record tying him to the kerosene," Wardell said. "That is enough for an arrest and enough for a trial." "You will regret this," Colby Sr. said. "Maybe," Wardell said, "but at least I will be able to sleep at night." Nathaniel was held in the town jail awaiting trial. Colby Sr. tried to make bail, but the judge, perhaps feeling guilty about his earlier treatment of Oliver, set the bail high enough that even the Colbys hesitated to pay it. The trial was set for 3 weeks later in the circuit court. In the meantime, Oliver and Sylvia finished the barn. The men who had been helping them came back, and this time a few more joined them. The tide was turning. People were starting to see that the Colbys could be stood up to, that their power was not absolute. The barn was completed in early October. It was smaller than the old one, but solid and well built. Sylvia stood in the doorway and cried, and Oliver held her, his heart full. "We did it," she said. "We did," he agreed. The trial was held on a cold day in late October. The courtroom was packed. Oliver and Sylvia sat in the front row, holding hands. Nathaniel sat with his father and a lawyer, looking arrogant and unconcerned. The prosecutor presented the evidence. The sales ledger showing the kerosene purchase on the Colby account. Terence the bootmaker's testimony that he had seen Nathaniel near Sylvia's property the night of the fire. The fire chief's testimony that both fires had been set with kerosene. The pattern of harassment that had preceded the fires. The defense argued that the ledger entry did not prove Nathaniel had bought the kerosene, only that it had been charged to the family account. They argued that Terence could not be certain in the dark whom he had seen. They argued that Nathaniel had no motive to burn down a barn. But Oliver testified about the peace bond, about the way Nathaniel had harassed Sylvia, about Colby Sr.'s threat that Sylvia could be destroyed. And Sylvia testified about her marriage, about the years of cruelty, about the way Nathaniel had never been able to let her go. By the end of the trial, the jury was out for less than 2 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict. Nathaniel was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial penitentiary. Colby Sr. stood up, his face red with rage, and shouted that it was a travesty, a miscarriage of justice. The judge banged his gavel and ordered him removed. Outside the courthouse, Oliver and Sylvia stood in the cold autumn air and breathed. It was over. Finally, it was over. But there was one more thing. 2 days later, Colby Sr. came to their house. He did not come with threats this time. He came with a bank draft. "Restitution," he said stiffly, "for the barn and the horses, as ordered by the court." Oliver took the draft and looked at it. It was for $1,500, more than enough to cover what they had lost. "And," Oliver said, because he could see there was more. Colby Sr. looked like he was chewing glass. "And I am prepared to offer an additional settlement to avoid a civil trial, $2,000 if you agree not to pursue further damages." Oliver looked at Sylvia. She looked back at him, her face calm. "We accept," she said. Colby Sr. handed over a second draft and a paper for them to sign. Oliver read it carefully, then signed. Sylvia signed as well. "I want you to know," Colby Sr. said, his voice shaking with suppressed fury, "that you have made an enemy today." "No," Oliver said. "Your son made an enemy when he could not let go of a woman who did not want him. We are just the people who finally said no." Colby Sr. left without another word. With the restitution money and the settlement, Oliver and Sylvia had enough to not just rebuild, but to expand. They bought the lot next to Sylvia's house, a piece of land that had been sitting empty for years. Oliver drew up plans for a proper livery stable, with stalls for boarding horses and a large corral for training and rehabilitation work. They spent the winter building. This time they hired help, paying fair wages to men who needed the work. By spring, They had a livery that was the envy of the county, clean and well built, with room for 20 horses. They called it the Ingram and Carter livery, and they specialized in taking in horses that other people had given up on. Horses that were injured or frightened, or had been broken by cruel treatment. Sylvia had a gift for working with them, a patience and gentleness that Oliver admired. He handled the business side, buying and selling, making contacts, bringing in clients. Word spread quickly. People came from miles around to board their horses or to bring in animals that needed help. The livery became known as a place where even the most difficult horses could be healed. They worked side by side every day, and every night they went home to the small house that had once been Sylvia's alone. They talked about their lives, their pasts, their dreams. They learned each other in the way that people do when they choose each other deliberately, when they build something together from the ground up. Oliver had never imagined he could be this happy. He had spent his whole life thinking that freedom meant being unattached, but he had learned that real freedom was choosing what you cared about and fighting for it. He had chosen Sylvia, and she had chosen him, and together they had built something real. One evening in early summer, they were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the corral. A dozen horses grazed peacefully in the fading light. The livery was full, business was good, and the town had slowly, grudgingly accepted them. "You ever regret it?" Sylvia asked. "Giving up the road, staying here?" Oliver looked at her. "Not for a second, do you?" "No," she said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think my life was over, that I would spend the rest of my days alone, afraid and small. You gave me my life back." "We gave each other our lives back," he said. "I was just wandering before I met you. Now I have a home." "Do you ever think about children?" she asked, and he heard the hesitation in her voice. He thought about it. "Do you want children?" "I used to," she said. "Before Nathaniel convinced me I was broken, but I do not know any more. I am 32. Maybe it is too late, and maybe after everything I do not need children to be happy." "I do not need them either," Oliver said. "I have you and I have this." He gestured to the livery, to the land, to the life they had built. "If children come, we will love them. If they do not, we will love each other. Either way, I will be happy." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "You are a good man, Oliver Ingram." "I try," he said. They sat there as the sun set and the stars came out, the sound of horses moving in the corral, the smell of hay and dust and home. A year passed, and then another. The livery thrived. They bought more land, expanded the corrals, hired 2 men to help with the work. They became known throughout the territory as the best place to bring a difficult horse, and people came from as far as Montana and Oregon to seek their help. Nathaniel served his time in the penitentiary. When he was released after 4 years on good behavior, he left the territory and never came back. Colby Sr. sold the bank and moved to Seattle, unable to bear the shame of his son's conviction. The power the family had held over Mineral Point crumbled, and the town began to breathe easier. Oliver and Sylvia became a fixture in the community. They were invited to town events, asked to sit on committees, respected for the business they had built and the integrity with which they ran it. It was not easy, and there were still people who remembered the scandal, who whispered about the divorced woman and the drifter who had stayed. But most people saw them for what they were, a couple who had fought for each other and won. On their 5th anniversary, Oliver surprised Sylvia with a gift. It was a sign for the livery, hand-carved and painted, with their names and a picture of a horse. "I thought we should make it official," he said. "This is our place, our life. I wanted to have our mark on it." She cried, of course, but they were happy tears. They hung the sign over the gate and stood back to admire it. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he said. That autumn, The territorial mail service put out a request for bids on a new contract. They were looking for a livery to provide horses for the mail stage, a lucrative contract that would guarantee steady income for years. Oliver and Sylvia put in a bid, carefully calculated, fair but competitive. They did not expect to win. There were larger liveries, more established businesses. But they had built a reputation for quality and reliability, and that counted for something. The day the announcement came, Oliver was in the corral working with a skittish mare. Sylvia came running from the house, waving a letter. "We got it," she shouted. "Oliver, we got the contract." He dropped the lead rope and ran to her. She threw her arms around him and he spun her in a circle, both of them laughing. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." "We did," she said. They stood there in the yard, holding each other, and Oliver thought about the telegram he had read 5 years earlier, about the partnership he had lost, about the life he had thought he wanted. He thought about the day Nathaniel had ridden into this yard and he had stepped between them, and how that one decision had changed everything. He had stayed. He had put down roots. He had built a life with a woman he loved, and it was the best decision he had ever made. That evening they celebrated with Mrs. Parrish and Ellis, and a few of the men who had helped them build the livery. They ate and drank and told stories, and when everyone had gone home, Oliver and Sylvia sat on the porch and looked out at the land they had built together. "Thank you for staying," Sylvia said. "Thank you for letting me," Oliver said. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened, the stars bright overhead, the sound of horses moving peacefully in the barn. The livery was theirs, the contract was theirs, the life was theirs. It had not been easy. It had cost them both more than they could have imagined. But it had been worth it. Oliver had spent his whole life moving, chasing the next place, the next job, the next horizon. He had thought freedom meant never being tied down. But he had learned that real freedom was choosing what mattered and fighting for it. He had chosen Sylvia and she had chosen him, and together they had built something that would last. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. She squeezed back. They did not need words. They had said everything that needed to be said in the years they had spent building this life. In the mornings they woke up beside each other. In the work they did side by side. In the quiet evenings when they sat together and watched the sun set over the land they loved. Oliver had finally found his home, and he was never leaving. The years that followed were good ones. The mail contract brought steady income and with it stability. They hired more help, trained more horses, expanded their reputation. People throughout Washington Territory knew the name Ingram and Carter, knew that if they needed a reliable horse or a difficult animal gentled, this was the place to come. Oliver and Sylvia never did have children. It was a choice they made together, talked about on long evenings and quiet mornings. They had each other, they had the livery, they had the horses they rehabilitated and the people they helped. It was a full life, rich and meaningful, and they did not feel the lack. There were people who whispered about it, of course. People who said it was a shame, that a marriage without children was somehow less. But Oliver and Sylvia did not care. They had learned long ago that other people's opinions could not touch what they had built together. On their 10th anniversary, they threw a party at the livery. Half the town came, and people from the surrounding ranches, and even a few from as far away as Spokane. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. Oliver stood at the edge of the crowd and watched Sylvia laughing with Mrs. Parrish, and he felt a profound gratitude for the life they had made. "You look happy," Ellis said, coming to stand beside him. "I am," Oliver said. "I remember when you first came to town," Ellis said. "Thought you would leave after a week. Most men would have." "I am not most men," Oliver said. "No," Ellis agreed. "You are not. You are the kind of man who stays, and that makes all the difference." As the sun set and the party continued, Oliver pulled Sylvia aside and led her to the edge of the property where they could see the whole spread. The livery, the corrals, the house they had expanded over the years, the land they had worked and loved and made their own. "You remember the day we met?" he asked. "How could I forget?" she said. "You stepped between me and Nathaniel, and you did not even know me." "I knew enough," he said. "I knew you needed help and I could give it. You gave me more than that," she said. "You gave me a future, a life, hope." "You gave me those things too," he said. "Before you, I was just wandering. I had no idea what I was looking for. Turns out I was looking for you." She turned to him, her eyes bright in the fading light. "I love you, Oliver Ingram. I will love you until the day I die." "And I love you, Sylvia Ingram," he said. "More than I ever thought possible." They kissed as the sun set, the sound of the party behind them, the land stretching out before them. It was a perfect moment, one of many they had shared over the years and would share in the years to come. Oliver had been a drifter, a man with no ties and no home. But he had found both in a town in eastern Washington Territory, in a woman who had needed someone to stay, and in the life they had built together from courage and stubbornness and love. He had stepped between her and danger, and he had stayed. And in staying, he had found everything he had never known he was looking for. The Ingram and Carter livery continued to thrive for decades. It became a landmark in Mineral Point, a symbol of what determination and love could build. People told the story of how it started, how a drifter had stepped in to help a woman everyone else had abandoned, how he had given up everything to stay, how together they had built something that lasted. And every morning as the sun rose over the corrals and the horses stirred in their stalls, Oliver and Sylvia Ingram stood together and looked at what they had made. They had fought for it, bled for it, sacrificed for it. And it was theirs. It was home. And that was worth everything.